And for more on the fast food worker walkout, we're joined by Philip Dine, author of State of the Unions, How Labor Can Strengthen the Middle Class, Improve Our Economy, and Regain Political Influence. Thanks so much for joining us again tonight, Philip.
Pleasure.
So fast food workers in 60 cities across the U.S. walked off the job today as they protested for higher wages. Currently, and this changes according to the statistics, but the median pay for fast food workers across the country is about $9 an hour, or about $18,500 a year. Minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, and they want to make their pay more than double minimum wage at $15 per hour. Is this a reasonable jump or leap to go from that to double?
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anybody really thinks that's going to happen. I think what they're trying to do is start a discussion about the fact that they're working full-time and can't survive on the wages they're making in an industry that nets about $200 billion a year. And by the way, the 18.5 that you said they make, I think that's based on $9 an hour for 40-hour work weeks. One of the other problems in this industry is that a lot of the workers don't work full-time. They may work 20, 25 hours a week, so they actually make even less.
Well, the argument could be made that if minimum wage is raised, then they will work even fewer hours because the employers will cut down and it won't actually result in more work as employers try to keep their costs down.
That's a fair point. And you could also argue that the workers who would be most hurt are young workers, because a lot of workers get their start at minimum wage jobs. And I think you raise a fair point that a lot of companies will go to automation, hire fewer workers, and so on. But the point still is that these workers are unable to survive on these rates.
Now, Philip, we're talking about unskilled workers here, and to play devil's advocate, the case could also be made that, hey, if they get a boost of $15 an hour, why should they get paid a similar amount to what employees that have an education be paid? For example, the National Education Association estimates that starting salaries for teachers at about $35,000 a year with a bachelor's degree equals to about $18 an hour. So you could say, hey, why should someone who gets paid, who got paid to have an education, make only $3 more an hour than an unskilled laborer that doesn't have the debt incurred with an education?
First of all, I don't know if I would call these people unskilled. You need to have a lot of skills to cook food that people are going to want to eat, to keep things clean, to move the lines along. I don't think these are unskilled workers. I think their work requires training. Secondly, about a third of all fast food workers actually have college educations, or at least some college experience. And also, go back 100 years. You know, manufacturing workers at that point were paid very little, and people said they're just running machines or unskilled. Well, they unionized, they got much better wages and benefits, and I don't think today anybody would say that aerospace workers or steel workers and so on should be paid minimum wage. And you know, so one could argue that the work that these folks do in the service sector, it's not set by the heavens that their work should be so much less remunerated than manufacturing workers. It's just the way it is right now.
Philip, I want to talk about minimum wage very quickly. The U.S. has not changed the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour since 2009. President Obama has called for an increase in this. What kind of impact would that have on the economy?
Well, again, like you said, there's arguments on both sides. You could argue that it'll put more money in the pockets of working people, and that'll boost the economy. You could also argue that it's going to hurt businesses, and it's going to lead to few workers being hired, and that would hurt the economy. But you know, it also, I think businesses are too fast to oppose any kind of increase. Actually, businesses in the short term may pay a little more, but they have a more stable, better trained, more satisfied workforce, and they don't have to continually hire replacements, which benefits them. So I think there's good arguments on either side of this.
Phil, very quickly, what impact will a pay rise have on the $200 billion fast food industry? Will it be passed on to consumers?
I don't think it necessarily needs to be passed on to consumers. A fairly low percentage of what they charge for a hamburger or a hot dog or whatever it is actually the wages that workers get. Most of it is overhead and the food itself. and so on. And again, I think they'd benefit in some ways because they would have a more stable, more permanent workforce. So I think it would have a minimum impact on them, and it would help workers.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insight, Philip Dine, author of State of the Unions: How Labour Can Strengthen the Middle Class, Improve Our Economy, and Regain Political Influence.